My name is Onel Masardule. I am Kuna from Panama. I live in the Uzdub community, which is part of the Kuna Yala community.
Welcome to Get Ready, brought to you by the World Bank and the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility. Onel Masardule is a traditional leader of Kuna Yala in Panama. He is also an activist who has been fighting for recognition of his community and their way of living. He represents the indigenous peoples of Latin America as an observer in climate finance activities and a negotiator in climate negotiations, making sure that indigenous peoples are compensated for their protection of the forest. This is important as indigenous peoples have specific social and cultural connections to the land and forest that they and their ancestors have lived in and protected for generations. Masardule has been working with one way to do it, called REDD+. Learn about it and what people are doing here on Get Ready.
Like so many indigenous territories, 80% of the territory is still green forest, and there's no cattle ranching or intensive cultivation. Agriculture is only practiced for consumption. The traditional crops that are consumed are the basic products, such as cassava, yams, corn, and fruits like banana, mango, and pineapple. It is a relationship. It is a close bond because we depend on the forests. The Kuna indigenous peoples spend their time on the land and in the forest. They know when to harvest. It depends on the rain, on the moon. But now we see long periods of drought, or the other way around. We see more rain when we don't expect it. All these changes are a signal to the indigenous people.
Around the world, burning carbon fuels like coal and gasoline adds carbon to the air, leading to heat. So much heat that it changes the patterns of the world climate, which is called climate change. But trees take carbon out of the air through their leaves and store it in the wood. So preserving the forest helps to fight climate change while it preserves the way of life for people who live in the forest. That's what REDD+ is about.
I have been involved in this issue of climate change and the REDD+ team for over 10 years. For me, my experience indicates that REDD+ can support indigenous peoples to conserve their forests. But taking into account the demands of indigenous peoples on their forests and REDD+, it must support governments to recognize the rights that indigenous peoples have on their forests and territories.
Since the indigenous peoples have lived in the forest for generations and have a deep understanding of the forest, Masardule emphasizes that forest communities must be part of the solution.
There is an anecdote that a Panama government official came to our territories at a leadership meeting. He said, "Look at the forest that you have. You have resources to exploit, but you're not working it. Why don't you do that?" The indigenous leader replied, "How can you expect me to destroy my pharmacy, my supermarket, my resource to build my house? These are the resources that I have. What would you do if I go to Panama City and destroy a pharmacy? You will put me in jail."
The REDD+ scheme aims to make forests more valuable standing than they would be cut down by placing a value on the carbon they store. Starting from a target level of reductions in carbon, countries receive payments based on their success in meeting their goal. REDD+ requires the protection of people and nature, and that the rights and traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples are respected. In Belize, Pablo Miz, a Maya indigenous leader, represents his people in REDD Plus dealings with the government of Belize and international organizations.
It is targeting areas and countries where there is still large scale or large tracts of remaining forest, so that there can be a renewed and a redoubling of efforts to maintain the standing forest, and where forests have been removed, that there is a greater effort to restore, to regenerate those forests. And ultimately, the idea is that forests are magical, that they play a critical role in absorbing carbon that's in the atmosphere, and that it is that carbon that is actually leading to the warming of the environment.
Miz says indigenous communities should have a big say in the management of their lands.
What we have been doing as indigenous peoples in our communities, the fact that we're still amongst these trees, these standing trees, it means then that we have been doing some things that are important, that are powerful, that are profound, that are a part of the solution to REDD Plus. So there is a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of practice that we are already doing as indigenous peoples, that if properly considered, that if put in the context of it being a part of the solution, we can see REDD Plus as something that can easily strengthen what we have done best for generations, and that is to take care of the forest.
In Panama, Masardule is working toward a similar goal.
The main thing is to maintain the forests, taking care of forests and the biodiversity, because that's what's going to make it possible for us to sustain ourselves.
While it can be a challenging process, Masardule says it has developed partnerships with mutual respect among governments, indigenous peoples, and international organizations. He believes the reward can be worth the effort.
Desde mi posición personal,
From my personal position, I accept REDD Plus because it's an opportunity to advance issues such as the rights of indigenous peoples, the recognition of their rights, and the non-violation of their rights.
el reconocimiento de sus derechos, la no violación de sus derechos.
Get Ready is a production of the World Bank and Developing Radio Partners. I'm Anna Arana.